911. My neighbor is a federal agent. He's spying on the entire neighborhood. That's what this unhinged woman shrieked into her phone in the middle of the night, standing right in my driveway dressed in a hot pink nightgown and bright blue hair rollers. Meet Angela Foster, not just my neighbor but the reigning president of our HOA, and she was having a full-on meltdown right before my eyes. She was convinced she had finally caught me in the act of something illegal. What she didn't realize was that I had been waiting for this very moment for a long time. So when the police officers showed up and I presented what I had gathered, Angela's smug smirk melted into raw panic faster than I could have imagined. That expression of absolute shock and horror was unforgettable. Let me walk you through how this entire disaster began. After retiring from 25 years with the FBI tracking some of the darkest criminals out there, I was ready for a peaceful life. I bought a quiet corner property in Willowbrook Highlands to launch my new consulting gig. Seemed like the perfect place. I couldn't have been more wrong. The very first day I was moving in, a woman marched over like she ruled the neighborhood. She had a thick folder in hand, a massive, like a binder you'd expect to hold courtroom documents. "Welcome to Willowbrook Highlands," she announced, pasting on a fake grin that wouldn't convince a toddler. "I'm Angela Foster, your queen. Oops, I mean HOA president. This manual includes every single rule you'll be required to follow. Break them, and you'll be fined." Immediately, I flipped through the folder. It was 73 pages long. 73. Who writes a novel-length rulebook for a suburban neighborhood? Then it got even weirder. She leaned in close and whispered, "The last owners couldn't meet our standards. They sold after only 8 months. Poor souls couldn't keep up with all the fines." And the way she said it, cold, smug, almost proud, triggered my instincts. This wasn't just an uptight neighbor. This woman got genuine joy from financially hurting people. The first week was like a whirlwind of bureaucracy from hell. First notice, $200 fine for my garden hose being visible from the street, supposedly a violation of Rule 47B. Next day, $300 because my mailbox wasn't the correct shade of beige. Not just any beige, it had to be Sherwin-Williams accessible beige number 7036. Not 7035, not 7037, precisely 7036. Day after that, $250 fine because my car's wheels touched the grass during a rainstorm. Then $150 for a newspaper left on the lawn, a visual clutter, she called it. And to cap it all off, a $400 fine because my security cameras created a surveillance atmosphere. By the end of that first week, I was $1,300 deep in HOA penalties. And while I could have challenged every one of them, my gut told me something more sinister was going on. So, I paid up quietly while documenting everything in secret. Angela wasn't just enforcing rules. She was pushing, testing, seeing how far she could go before I either cracked or packed up. That's when Harold Jenkins, my neighbor across the street, changed everything. Harold's a retired bank manager, straight-laced, detail-obsessed. One evening, he shuffled over, looking like he was about to confess to a felony. "Thomas," he said in a hushed voice, "I've been watching Angela wreck families for 3 years now. She's pushed 6 households to sell for peanuts, then her partner Kyle scoops the homes up cheap and flips them for massive profits." He showed me a treasure trove of evidence, photographs of Angela measuring grass with a ruler like it was a forensic exam, screenshots of her posts online. "We need more surveillance for violators. This is my kingdom, and I'm the queen. Don't like it? Leave." Then there were the bank records. Every time a family left, Angela's finances surged. That's when it all clicked. This wasn't just about annoying fines. It was an elaborate scam, a deliberate, well-oiled plan to pressure people out and profit off their desperation. And I, a former federal agent, was living next to one of the most strategic property scammers I'd ever seen. So I shifted into work mode. I started studying her, profiling her like I would any criminal. Every morning at dawn, she'd step out with her camera and measuring tape like some petty suburban dictator surveying her empire. By midday, she'd be calling the city with bogus reports about her neighbors. And evenings, that's when she'd go online, ranting about declining community standards and how everyone should be thanking her for protecting property values. She wasn't just a bully. She'd turned tyranny into a career. Her posts were something else. Some people don't understand excellence. I'm here to teach them. Property values are my responsibility. Residents should be grateful. It was like reading a psychology textbook on narcissism in real time. But what really stood out, the underlying threat in every post, a promise that anyone who stood up to her would face consequences. She was running a psychological warfare campaign, not just a neighborhood watch. Then came the turning point. At the moment things escalated beyond HOA nonsense into full-blown criminal territory. Angela somehow found out about my FBI past, maybe through some late-night Googling, maybe through someone in her network. But the moment she did, her entire attitude changed. Suddenly, she wasn't strutting around anymore. She was scared. I overheard her in her backyard whispering frantically into the phone to someone named Kyle. "The new guy broke in bar, he's FBI," she said, her voice shaky. "What if he finds out about our setup?" Kyle, whoever he was, tried to calm her down. "Relax," he told her. "He's retired, he's no threat." But Angela wasn't convinced. And neither was I. I might be an older man now, but Angela clearly didn't care. "No," she snapped during that call, "I need him gone before he finds out too much." That one conversation confirmed everything I suspected. First, there really was an ongoing operation. Second, she was genuinely frightened of my past in federal law enforcement. And third, she was getting ready to take her harassment to the next level in an attempt to force me out before I could uncover the truth. What she didn't realize was that I had already started profiling her the same way I used to analyze dangerous criminals. And what I discovered even shocked me. And I've seen some of the darkest minds this country has to offer. Angela wasn't just a nosy hoe figurehead drunk on authority. No, she was a calculated manipulator who had mastered the art of turning neighborhood regulations into weapons. Her strategy? Use technical violations and relentless pressure to rob people of their most valuable possession at their homes. And the brilliance of it all? She operated just within the boundaries of legality. On paper, it all looked like strict rule enforcement. But in reality, it was psychological warfare. A slow, deliberate grind designed to emotionally exhaust and financially cripple people until selling and leaving was their only option. I'd encountered criminal networks less refined than the system Angela Foster had built right here in our quiet neighborhood. But for me, this wasn't just another case. It was personal. After decades of confronting serial offenders, terrorists, and predators, I thought I'd seen it all. But people like Angela, these suburban predators, they don't shed blood. They bleed people financially. They don't steal lives. They steal futures. Angela Foster was dismantling people's dreams and livelihoods, all while hiding behind a smile, a pearl necklace, and the title of community leader. Everything I'd ever fought against during my career, that's exactly who she was, just dressed up in a different disguise. And what she hadn't counted on, that even in retirement, this former FBI agent still had a little fight left in him. She was about to learn exactly what happens when you push the wrong person, especially one trained to hunt down people just like her. What do you think Angela's next move will be? Leave your predictions in the comments, as some of you might be closer to the truth than you think. Because the move she made next changed everything. It was around then that Angela officially launched a full-on campaign against me. And when she did, she didn't hold back. First, a city inspector knocked on my door. Someone had filed a report accusing me of running unauthorized commercial operations out of my home. Then, the HOA board hit me with a formal complaint, citing aggressive behavior and intimidating federal presence. Next came private investigators combing through my trash. A perfectly legal one sits on the curb, but disturbing nonetheless. By the end of the week, Angela had practically started a neighborhood rumor mill. "He's probably still working undercover," she'd say to anyone who'd listen. "He could be monitoring our personal activities. Who knows what he's reporting?" Before long, a petition was circulating about safety concerns regarding my presence in the community. Her manipulation was surgical and disturbingly effective. But the hardest blow? That city inspection put a freeze on my consulting business pending an investigation. I lost a major contract that day, over $12,000, money I had counted on for my retirement. For the first time since Angela had entered my life, I genuinely considered walking away, packing up, selling the house, and escaping her madness. Maybe it wasn't worth the trouble. Maybe peace would be easier somewhere else. But then I watched her propaganda campaign up close. Angela, all dolled up in full makeup and jewelry like she was campaigning for office, went door to door. She wasn't spreading hope, she was spreading fear. "Did you know a former federal agent is living right here among us?" She'd whisper. "Think about your privacy, your tax records, your kids. Are we really safe?" She was blending valid concerns about surveillance with wild conspiracy theories, painting me as some kind of secret spy operation when I was just trying to enjoy my retirement in peace. And it worked. Neighbors who used to wave started avoiding eye contact. Some even crossed the street when they saw me coming. People talked behind my back at the mailbox. Even folks who'd once been friendly now looked at me with suspicion. Angela's smear campaign had become a full-blown social exile strategy, and it was working. But thank God for people like Harold Jenkins and a handful of others who saw through her mask. Harold stood by me despite the growing pressure. One night, he confided, "Thomas, I'm scared too, for both of us. But if someone doesn't stop her, she's going to keep destroying lives." Mrs. Carter, the sweet elderly lady down the block, pulled me aside one morning. She whispered, "Dr. Blake, I can't say this out loud. I'm too scared of what she'll do. But a lot of us are praying for you. We hope you win. We can't help you openly." It was those quiet words and those behind-the-scenes messages of hope that gave me the strength to keep going. Angela wasn't just harassing me, she was creating a culture of fear, silencing an entire neighborhood through manipulation and intimidation. She made people choose between standing for what's right and protecting themselves from her retaliation. That's when it finally hit me. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was no longer just about me. It was about every family Angela had pushed out, every senior citizen she'd financially squeezed, every kid who had to say goodbye to their friends because their parents couldn't keep up with her bogus fines. Then came Kyle Foster, Angela's right-hand man. Think of him as her personal enforcer/fake private investigator. I started spotting the same cart tailing me on errands, staying far enough back to avoid obvious suspicion, but close enough that I noticed. Someone was sifting through my trash every garbage day. I saw people snapping photos of my home from public sidewalks. Even worse, neighbors told me some guy had been asking questions around the block under the cover of a phony insurance investigation. When I pressed one of them, they told me Kyle claimed he was evaluating neighborhood security threats. It was amateur-hour surveillance, laughable to someone with my background, but the fact that Angela had brought in backup told me one thing. I was getting uncomfortably close to a truth she was desperate to hide. Harold later confirmed it. "Thomas," he said, "Kyle Foster's not just her little helper, he's her business partner. If he's circling like this, they're nervous, probably panicking." What happened next was straight out of a political thriller. Angela called an emergency home meeting and staged it like a high-stakes trial. And honestly, watching her orchestrate the manipulation was almost impressive, if it hadn't been so malicious. 54 people showed up, at the largest turnout in the community's history. Angela had prepared like she was delivering closing arguments at a high-profile court case. There were graphs, charts, photos, printed government articles, and the whole dramatic package. "Ladies and gentlemen," she declared, sounding like a daytime soap actress, "we are under attack." She gestured toward me with mock alarm. "Thomas Blake claims to be retired FBI, but all signs suggest he's conducting a covert surveillance operation right here in our peaceful neighborhood." The so-called evidence was absurd, unless you'd completely surrendered your critical thinking skills to fear. But Angela knew how to weaponize paranoia. Images of my legal home security system, spun as proof of government spying, screenshots from my consulting business website, twisted into claims that I was still on the job, operating in secret. Even FedEx deliveries were framed as covert meetings with federal agents. Then, at her dramatic peak, she pointed directly at me. "This man is spying on our homes, on our families. Our children are not safe. Our property values are at risk. We must act." I calmly stood and said, "Mrs. Foster, I'd like to respond with facts and clarification." But she cut me off instantly. "No, you've had your chance. This is our neighborhood, not your federal outpost." Then came the vote, a pure mob mentality at play. "All in favor of requesting Thomas Blake's removal?" she asked. Final tally, 31 in favor, 23 against. Angela looked victorious, glowing. "The community has spoken," she declared. "You have 30 days to vacate or we pursue legal action." I smiled politely. "Thank you for allowing a democratic process," I said aloud. But inside, I was thrilled, because Angela had just incriminated herself in front of 54 people. Later that night, Harold showed up with a manila folder that flipped the entire story upside down. Inside were financial records, undeniable proof that Angela had been embezzling from the HOA for over a year and a half. More than $31,000 gone from community accounts, all routed through bogus vendors tied to Kyle's companies. There were expenses that made no sense, like $8,700 for office equipment that turned out to be custom furniture in Angela's living room. The pattern was unmistakable. Right before every family was forced to leave, spending from the HOA accounts spiked. It was clear she needed funding to keep her harassment engine running. Harold's hands trembled as he flipped through the documents. "Thomas," he said, "this isn't just about power games. She's been stealing from all of us while targeting anyone who might expose her." That was the moment it fully clicked. Angela wasn't just a ruthless HOA president. She was running a well-disguised criminal enterprise, hiding in plain sight behind pearls and whole letterhead. I picked up the phone and called my old partner, Agent Betty Harris. Just hearing her voice brought back memories of the cases we'd cracked together. "Betty," I said, "I need your take on something. My HOA president has been sending fraudulent violation letters through the mail and using community funds for personal gain. Where does that land legally?" There was a long pause. Then Betty's tone shifted instantly, from casual to federal-level serious. "Fake mail notices, misusing HOA funds?" "Thomas, a broken bar, that's federal crime territory. We're talking mail fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy at minimum. If you've got real proof." "She's looking at multiple felonies." That call changed everything. Angela wasn't just a bully with a clipboard. She was a white-collar predator, a thief in suburban camouflage, who had been destroying lives for years while pretending to protect the neighborhood. And now, she was officially on my radar. The only question now was how far was I willing to go to bring Angela down? As I ended the call with Betty, I didn't yet know Angela was already preparing her most desperate, dangerous move, something so extreme it would push me to the very edge of everything I'd learned in my 25 years in federal law enforcement. And a drama-nest family, what do you think Angela's next move might be? Share your guesses below, because what happens when a predator is truly cornered? It's rarely predictable. That's when Angela went all in, and this time, her attack nearly shattered me. A city inspector returned with a cease and desist notice that chilled me to the core. "Mr. Blake," he said, "due to repeated noise complaints, zoning infractions, and reported safety concerns, you are hereby prohibited from running any business out of this residence." Just like that, my consulting income vanished. Gone overnight. My retirement savings began bleeding out like a cracked pipe, and Angela, ever the sadist, couldn't help but post her twisted celebration online. Mission accomplished. Federal surveillance shut down. Property values secure. Don't challenge the Queen. Seeing those words, watching her gloat over ruining my livelihood, it was more than rage. It was a terrifying realization. This woman wasn't just cruel. She was tactical, unflinching, and ruthlessly committed to controlling the lives of others. But then she crossed a line I didn't think even she would touch. Harold Jenkins, my 73-year-old neighbor, the one person in this fight who'd never wavered, had a heart attack. I heard the sirens and ran out, ready to help. But what I saw nearly pushed me to violence. Angela had orchestrated a blockade of Harold's driveway, citing some fabricated HOA rule about non-compliant pavement. Multiple vehicles had been parked in a way that blocked paramedics from getting close. They had to carry Harold and all their equipment several blocks to the ambulance. While he was having a heart attack, when I visited him in the hospital, seeing this kind old man connected to machines because of her cruelty, he gripped my hand with tears in his eyes and whispered, "Thomas. She did this on purpose." She said my driveway was against regulations, but this wasn't about cement or rules. This was her way of punishing me for helping you. That moment broke something in me. Angela wasn't just issuing fines or empty threats anymore. She was endangering lives at all to maintain her twisted grip on control. I hit rock bottom. My savings had dropped to $3,200 and falling fast. I had zero income. Legal expenses were climbing past $8,500. The few neighbors who once nodded in support now avoided eye contact. Angela's pressure campaign had shattered any remaining community support I had. But worst of all, Harold was still lying in a hospital bed, simply because one woman decided to weaponize emergency access as a tool for revenge. That night, I called Betty Harris again, but this time, it wasn't strategy, it was defeat. "Betty," I told her, "I think she's won. My money's nearly gone. I've been isolated. She's attacking innocent people. I don't know if I have it in me to keep fighting." But Betty, as always, cut straight to the truth. "Thomas," she said, "this woman is sending out fake violation letters through the postal system. She's stealing HOA funds, and she's manipulating families into selling low so her partner can swoop in and profit. That's mail fraud, that's embezzlement, that's property fraud, and all of it, that's federal crime territory." Her words flipped a switch in me. I'd been on the defensive for weeks, letting Angela control the pace and paint me as the villain. But I wasn't some amateur. I was Thomas Blake, a former behavioral analyst with the FBI. I've taken down criminal syndicates with more firepower and resources than this suburban empire builder. It was time to stop surviving and start hunting. The plan was clear and lethal in its simplicity: force Angela into a public breakdown, get her to expose her own crimes, make sure the entire community saw her true nature, and let her unravel all on her own. And I'd do it all by the book. No dirty tricks, no shortcuts, just cold, strategic execution. I started with what I knew best: intelligence gathering. Getting back into the rhythm of investigation was like riding a bike. I filed formal requests for HOA records, combed through every transaction, every invoice, every vendor name, and what I found made Harold's earlier discoveries look like the tip of the iceberg. Angela and Kyle had been working this scheme for 3 years, a coordinated hit on select properties, always homes that were about to skyrocket in value due to upcoming development. They weren't just picking random victims. They had access to confidential information, zoning changes, city planning schedules, infrastructure upgrades, all the things that would push market prices through the roof. They'd weaponized insider knowledge for personal gain. Angela's campaign of harassment wasn't random, far from it. Her attacks were cold, calculated strikes, aimed squarely at families living on properties that were projected to triple in value within a few short years. It wasn't chaos, it was precision, ruthless, deliberate, and shockingly efficient. When Agent Harris reviewed the evidence I'd compiled, her reaction confirmed everything I suspected. "Thomas," she said, "this goes way beyond harassment. This is orchestrated fraud. We're talking about fake mail used to manipulate homeowners, stolen equity, and coordinated scams worth millions. It's not just a neighborhood issue. This qualifies for a full-scale federal investigation." By then, my case file had grown massive. 67 photos and videos documenting fabricated violations, 18 months of financial records revealing consistent theft, testimonies from 5 different families forced to sell their homes at cut rates, proof of Kyle Foster engaging in illegal surveillance without a license, and the most damning piece of all, Harold's medical records clearly tying his heart attack to Angela's obstruction of emergency responders. Building that case awakened something in me, the side of me that had spent decades tracking manipulators, con artists, and predators. I wasn't just defending myself anymore, I was hunting again. But to finish this, I needed to set the perfect trap, and to do that, I had to understand Angela better than she understood herself. After profiling her behavior for months, I knew her patterns. If confronted with exposure, she'd lash out, deflect, blame others, and when that didn't work, she'd spiral into drastic action, trying to reclaim control. My psychological projection was clear: if publicly cornered, Angela would attempt a last-ditch counterattack, likely in the form of a bogus emergency call, accusing federal harassment. I just needed to make sure the entire neighborhood would witness her unraveling, and that the federal team would be ready to document it all. So, I mailed formal, certified notices to every member of the HOA, Emergency meeting requested. Agenda: misappropriated funds, fraudulent violation notices, and illegal activity requiring federal involvement. Angela's reaction was everything I'd anticipated: panic, and hearing her meltdown through the thin walls between our houses. It was almost pitiful. "She's calling a meeting. What if he found something?" she screamed over the phone to Kyle. Her voice cracked with fear. Kyle tried to calm her down. "You don't know that. Let's No," she snapped. "I'm not waiting." "Time for the nuclear option." Kyle hesitated. "What nuclear option?" Her answer sent a chill down my spine. "I'm filing a police report. He's a federal agent spying on citizens. They'll have no choice but to investigate him." Kyle warned her filing a false report against a federal officer wasn't just foolish, it was a felony. But Angela had stopped listening to reason. "He started this war," she growled. "I'll be the one to end it." Before the meeting, she posted one final message on the neighborhood board: "A pure delusional grandeur. Tomorrow, we end the harassment. The Queen defends her realm. Justice will prevail." Reading that, I knew she was finished. Her arrogance had finally cornered her. That night, I laid the final groundwork. My credentials polished and ready, my surveillance system primed, Agent Harris alerted and on standby. I logged my prediction for record-keeping. Psychological status: unstable. Anticipated action: false emergency call alleging harassment within 24 hours. Early that morning, my cameras picked up movement. Angela was pacing her lawn, phone in hand, muttering, clearly rehearsing. Would she follow the script I expected, or cross a line I hadn't yet seen? Even after chasing criminals for over 2 decades, what do you think Angela was planning at that moment? Drop your theories in the comments, because what happened next became the single most gratifying moment of my career. At exactly 3:17 a.m., every ounce of my training culminated in the takedown I had been building toward for weeks. Angela appeared on my surveillance feed, disheveled, spiraling. She wandered across her lawn in a neon pink nightgown swinging open at the sides, blue curlers bobbing on her head like a twisted crown. Her grip on her phone was wide-knuckled, like it was her last tether to power. And then, she made the call. From my window, I could hear her clearly. She wasn't whispering, she was shrieking. 911. Emergency. This is Angela Foster. My neighbor is a federal spy. He's got government cameras. He's watching everyone. He threatened me. You need to send someone now. She was unhinged. This is a violation of my constitutional rights. He's dangerous. Please, please help. The dispatcher tried to steady her, asked for details, but Angela had gone too far. He's with the FBI. He's spying on Americans. I have proof. He's harassing me. Government harassment. Just get someone here, please. The dispatcher assured her officers were being dispatched. Angela started laughing. Not relief, not joy, but the unhinged, manic laugh of someone who truly believed they'd outplayed the system one last time. For Angela, it must have felt like she'd hit the jackpot. She truly believed her scheme was working, that justice was being served for the self-proclaimed queen. I fired off a quick message to Agent Harris. She took the bait. False complaint incoming. Ready for federal logging. Her reply was immediate. FBI field office alerted. Case will be bulletproof. Moments later, I spotted 2 patrol cars approaching, lights flashing in the distance. I braced myself for what would either confirm everything I'd worked for, or become the most humiliating backfire of my post-bureau life. With my FBI badge tucked into one hand and my recording gear gripped in the other, I prepared for whatever would walk up to my door next. This moment would decide whether Angela Foster finally faced accountability, a broken bar, or managed to ruin another innocent person's life. The pounding at the door was intense, echoing like gunfire throughout the house. Bang, 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 bang. A commanding voice followed. "Sir, step outside." Reports of unauthorized federal surveillance. This was the moment it had all been building toward. 25 years in the field, all leading to this surreal showdown. When I opened the door, it felt like stepping into some over-the-top crime drama, the kind no one would believe was real. 2 officers stood stiff and formal, all authority and suspicion, and just behind them, like a fever dream specter, was Angela Foster, unhinged, wild-eyed, and glowing under her own flashlight. which she was shining directly into my face. Her blue hair rollers were askew like she just walked through a tornado, and her mascara had melted into jagged streaks on her face. The younger officer, Green, came in swinging. "Sir, we've had a report of illegal surveillance being conducted from this property." But Angela couldn't stay silent. She shrieked from behind him, louder than both officers combined. "That's him. That's the federal spy. Search his home. He's got surveillance equipment. He's watching all of us. He's running some secret program." Staring at her, this woman who had tormented families for years, I couldn't help the cold sense of justice that washed over me, but buried beneath that was something else, a flicker of pity, because this manic, unraveling mess was what it looked like when a narcissist's illusion of control shattered against hard reality. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. With total composure, I stepped forward. "Officers," I said coolly, "I'm Dr. Thomas Blake, retired FBI, Behavioral Analysis Unit." I slowly opened my badge wallet, letting the metallic crest reflect in the porch light like something divine. Officer Williams, clearly the more experienced of the two, leaned in to examine it. His whole demeanor changed, from doubt to curiosity to a broken bar, something close to awe. "Wholly a broken bar," he murmured, catching himself and quickly standing tall. "Dr. Blake, FBI Quantico, 25 years in federal service." Just like that, the entire dynamic flipped. The officers went from sizing me up as a threat to treating me like a trusted ally. Meanwhile, Angela's face contorted through a dozen emotions in seconds: confusion, rage, disbelief. She finally understood. I wasn't just a quiet retiree with a grudge. I was someone with credentials, history, and real power. Her unraveling was almost cinematic. Officer Williams turned to me. "Dr. Blake, what's your professional assessment here?" Keeping my tone formal and emotionless, I replied, "Officers, Mrs. Foster has spent weeks targeting residents. She's been embezzling HOA funds, fabricating violations, and orchestrating a house theft operation. This false report is retaliation for my investigation." Angela lost control. Her voice cracked into full hysteria. "He's lying. He's a spy. Check his house. He's using federal tech to watch us. This is government abuse." When Officer Green asked if she was formally accusing me of operating an unauthorized federal program, she doubled down. "Yes," he admitted it. "He brought other federal agents to the Anadrama Nest meeting. He's collecting private citizen data. Arrest him." Her desperation was deafening. But after what she'd done to Harold and others in our community, I had no sympathy left. What came next was the final, glorious destruction of the suburban dictatorship she'd ruled for far too long. I addressed the officers with clear, clinical professionalism. "Mrs. Foster is showing the classic behavior of someone cornered, someone facing consequences and lashing out. She's already being investigated for theft and mail fraud. Filing a false report just adds another crime to the list." That's when she shattered completely. She broke down, sobbing like a child who just realized the game was over. "I just wanted respect. I built this place. I protected it. Why are you ruining everything I worked for?" Her pink nightgown had fallen off one shoulder. The blue rollers in her hair were falling out onto the driveway. Her mascara had turned her face into a black streaked mask of delusion. And then came the screaming. "This is my kingdom. I am the queen. You can't dethrone me. I have connections." Watching Angela Foster, the same woman who had dominated and intimidated an entire community, now crumbling into a tear-stained mess in her frilly pink bathrobe, was, without question, the most satisfying moment of my professional life. Officer Williams handled the federal implications flawlessly, his tone sharp and serious. "Mrs. Foster," he said firmly, "filing false reports about federal agents is an extremely serious offense. Dr. Blake could press charges right now if he chose." I reinforced the point without hesitation. "Officers," I said, "Mrs. Foster just knowingly submitted a fabricated complaint involving a federal agent. The Bureau has been notified. False claims of this nature carry heavy legal consequences." Angela's wailing became more pitiful. "I didn't know. I thought he was dangerous. People kept saying he was a spy. I was protecting everyone." But Officer Williams remained unmoved. "Ma'am, You need to grasp the severity of this situation. Making false reports about federal agents isn't just bad judgment, it's a federal crime. It was a powerful moment, watching someone who'd abused her petty position for years suddenly recognize that she was completely powerless in the face of actual authority. The respect I received from the officers reminded me why I had once proudly served in the federal system. Dr. Blake, Officer Williams said with true deference, "Our deepest apologies. The Behavioral Analysis Unit stands as one of the finest arms of the Federal Service. Thank you for your decades of dedication." When they inquired about Angela's mental condition, I gave my clinical evaluation. She doesn't pose a physical threat. What you're seeing is an acute psychological collapse brought on by the pressure of impending legal action. What you've witnessed tonight is fully admissible and sufficient to support a federal case. Both the officers' body cams and my own gear had captured everything. When Officer Williams asked if I wished to press charges on the spot, I responded with the calm judgment that comes from years of experience. Right now, she needs professional psychological care more than a jail cell. The FBI's investigation will cover the criminal side. Angela's final emotional breakdown left her slumped against her doorframe, completely incoherent. The pink nightgown, the scattered blue hair rollers, and her ruined makeup gave her the appearance of a discarded porcelain doll, all remnants of a crumbling folly. Section 8. Eventually, the officers finished filing their full report and issued Angela a strict warning about the consequences of making false federal claims. She was left standing in her yard, sobbing beneath the streetlights. Her hair accessories lay scattered like wreckage around her, her mascara-streaked face lit dimly by the porch glow. Her phone had slipped from her hand and lay forgotten in the grass, her last weapon in a campaign to ruin an innocent life, now abandoned. I went back inside, reviewed the footage, and felt an overwhelming sense of closure. 25 years of training had taught me discipline, timing, and balance. Angela had just experienced all three up close. From across the street, Harold Jenkins had filmed the entire confrontation from behind his blinds. And by the next morning, our normally quiet neighborhood was abuzz with one subject only: the public unmasking of the so-called Queen Bee. As the sun rose over our street, a disturbing detail caught my attention. Angela wasn't just pacing her backyard in distress, she was destroying something. She had a metal trash bin lit up, and she was feeding it with paper, burning documents in a frenzy. And drama-nest viewers, what do you think she was trying to eliminate? What secrets do you think those burning pages held? Drop your wildest theories in the comments, because those flames were likely consuming evidence of a conspiracy far bigger than any of us had expected. By early morning, Harold was at my front door, grinning like a man who just won the lottery and holding 2 coffees. "Thomas," he said, practically glowing, "you're famous." A video of Angela's complete meltdown had been posted online and had already hit 50,000 views. The entire ordeal had gone viral overnight. The internet had crowned it the most satisfying justice video of the year. Clips were circulating showing side-by-side comparisons of Angela's arrogant online tirades next to footage of her sobbing in that ridiculous nightgown. The comment section, absolutely savage in the best way. Karen vs. FBI agent was trending, and view count was climbing past 2.3 million. Entitled "Co-President Gets Dismantled by Federal Agent" had already hit 847,000 views and rising. The online world rejoiced at Angela's public collapse. And frankly, after the chaos she inflicted on decent families, she had earned every second of this exposure. Agent Harris showed up at my door like it was a holiday, beaming, holding a thick manila folder. "Thomas," she said, "the federal prosecutor went through everything, your footage, the officer's body cams, the full report." Angela Foster was now staring down real federal prison time. The charges were everything we hoped for and more. 47 counts of mail fraud, one for each fake violation letter she had sent. Angela had used the postal system to send out fraudulent notices, leading to multiple counts of mail fraud. On top of that were charges of embezzlement for diverting HOA funds into her personal accounts. Then came the conspiracy charges tied to a shady house flipping operation with Kyle Foster. And finally, the ultimate insult, filing a false report against a federal agent. "This case is going to set a precedent," Betty said with a professional calm. Clearly pleased, it'll be used as a model for how organized scams disguise themselves behind the Section 8 of legitimate community associations. Hearing that, knowing that Angela was about to answer for years of intimidation, manipulation, and outright theft, gave me more satisfaction than any case I'd ever worked. The neighborhood's reaction was like watching a community waking from a long nightmare. What disturbed me most was learning how many families had quietly endured Angela's reign of psychological warfare. Mrs. Carter stepped forward with proof that Angela had stolen an $800 deposit for a landscaping project that never even got started. Mr. Rodriguez revealed that Angela had threatened to call immigration on his family if they dared to file a complaint, even though his family had been citizens longer than Angela had lived in the state. Miss Johnson showed receipts proving that Angela charged her elderly mother $500 for Christmas decoration violations, which weren't mentioned anywhere in the actual HOA bylaws. As more residents came forward, a horrifying pattern emerged. Angela had intentionally and methodically targeted 23 families over 3 years, defrauding them out of a total of $89,000, while leaving behind stress, fear, and financial insecurity. The property scam she and Kyle Foster had orchestrated was even more complex than I had realized. When federal agents raided Kyle's office, they uncovered meticulous records showing how they'd forced 8 families to sell their homes below market value, generating a staggering $340,000 in illegal gains. Kyle had inside information, advanced notice of development plans, rezoning efforts, and major infrastructure improvements that would soon raise property values. Angela's harassment wasn't random. She had deliberately targeted homes in these future high-value areas, pushing families out before they could benefit. Federal courts wasted no time. Every asset connected to the operation was frozen. Kyle, now under serious legal pressure, turned on Angela instantly. His cooperation was thorough, handing over every detail of their criminal partnership to the prosecutors. Angela's downfall was brutal and well-deserved. She couldn't keep up with mortgage payments now that her stolen HOA cash flow had dried up. Her house went into foreclosure. People who used to call her a friend now treated her like she carried a plague. No one wanted anything to do with the county's most infamous felon. Her name appeared on every news station once her criminal record hit public databases, making it impossible to get hired. She was ordered to pay $340,000 in restitution, an amount she'd likely spend a lifetime trying to repay. The self-proclaimed queen of the neighborhood was now living in a small studio apartment, scraping by with low-paying retail work, and attending court-ordered therapy. The federal trial that followed was everything justice should be. Angela refused a plea bargain, still stuck in the delusion that she was the victim of some vast government plot. The jury wasn't buying it. After a short deliberation, they returned a unanimous guilty verdict on every single charge. I was there in the courtroom when the judge read the sentence: 30 months in federal prison, 5 years of supervised release, $340,000 in restitution, and a lifetime ban from ever holding a position of authority in any homeowner association. The judge didn't mince words. Ms. Foster, you exploited a position of trust to hurt your neighbors. You'll now have time in federal custody to reflect on those choices. Angela's last words before being led away in cuffs were a pathetic whisper: I just wanted to be important. What followed felt like a democratic renaissance for our community. Harold Jenkins was elected HOA president with a unanimous vote. His first initiatives were focused on safeguarding the neighborhood from ever falling into the hands of another Angela Foster. Fine amounts were slashed, capped at $25 compared to Angela's outrageous $500 penalties. Photo evidence became mandatory for all reported violations, ending Angela's era of fabricated enforcement. Monthly transparency reports were introduced, ensuring that no one could siphon off community funds without immediate notice. And most importantly, all major decisions now required democratic voting, giving the power back to the residents where it always belonged. To prevent another would-be tyrant from ever taking control again, the community made sweeping changes. Incredibly, property values surged by 25% not long after Angela was removed, exposing her so-called concern for home values as nothing but a manipulative lie to justify her abuse of authority. Personally, That moment felt more rewarding than any accolade I had ever received during my FBI years. The consulting firm Angela had tried to sabotage was now thriving. Requests were pouring in from all over the country. Everyone wanted to consult with the man who had dismantled the most infamous HOA authoritarian in the nation. Even the FBI brought me back in, asking for my help in developing training tools to uncover how schemes like these hide behind legitimate community systems. But more than all that, I became something I never expected to be, a real hero to my neighborhood, the man who rescued an entire community from suburban tyranny. Harold organized a celebratory barbecue for the neighborhood, and over 150 residents came, including 5 new families who had chosen to move here because of the HOA's new, fair reputation. Children were laughing and playing freely in yards that Angela once ruled like her personal empire. Neighbors were chatting without fear of retaliation. That simple scene was more meaningful than any professional trophy or title. About a year later, I ran into Angela Foster again, hopefully for the last time. What I saw stopped me in my tracks. She was in the local grocery store, pale, gaunt, lifeless, using food stamps and wandering the aisles like a shadow of her former self. When she noticed me, she approached quietly and said, "Thomas, I'm sorry." I looked at the same woman who once terrorized dozens of families. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel pity. I felt something colder, a justice that had finally caught up with her. "You're not sorry you did it," I said as I walked past her. "You're just sorry you got caught." But as I reached my car, something caught my eye, a plain envelope tucked beneath my windshield wiper. What I found inside turned everything I believed about Angela's scheme completely upside down. It was a photograph of Angela shaking hands with a man in a sharp suit, standing outside City Hall. On the back, written neatly in cursive, were the words, "City Council Meeting, Zoning Approval, March 2023. Attached to the photo was a note that sent a chill down my spine. Dr. Blake. Angela wasn't the mastermind. She was the face. The real operation involves people you'd never suspect. Check the city planning records for Willowbrook Development LLC. A friend. Reading that, I felt my years of investigative experience shrink under the weight of what was now unfolding. Angela's crimes weren't the whole picture, they were just the beginning. Digging into Willowbrook Development LLC opened the door to something far more calculated than I'd imagined. The company had been created exactly 2 months before Angela became HOA president, a timeline far too convenient to be a coincidence. As I dug deeper, I uncovered the horrifying truth. The company was a front, controlled by none other than the city's planning commissioner, a person with direct access to every upcoming infrastructure upgrade, zoning change, and city project. Angela's harassment campaigns weren't impulsive outbursts, they were intentional assaults on families who lived in areas slated to triple in value. The plan was disturbingly brilliant. Use inside information to flag properties that would soon be worth far more. Install someone like Angela in a leadership role to pressure those families. Force them to sell under duress. Snap up the properties for cheap. Profit wildly once the developments went through. A few weeks later, I got an encrypted email from a sender I didn't recognize. The subject line made my heart skip a beat. "You only caught the small fish." The message was short but devastating. "Dr. Blake, your work exposing Angela Foster was impressive, but she was just a pawn. There are 12 more HOAs in the state running similar operations. Are you ready to bring down the entire network?" A ghost. Attached to the email were financial records, a hard evidence of a widespread house-stealing scheme. The scale was staggering. Hundreds of families, dozens of neighborhoods, and millions of dollars in stolen home equity, all flowing into the pockets of corrupt officials and their partners. Angela hadn't been an isolated tyrant. She was a cog in something massive, a machine stripping working families of their homes and dreams for profit. I called Agent Harris immediately. What I told her changed everything. "Betty, Angela's case, it was only the surface. I've found what looks like a statewide web of corrupt HOA leaders working with government insiders to strip families of their homes before developments spike the value." Betty's response was swift. "Are you ready to come out of retirement?" "Officially." "We could use your experience on this." I looked around at the peaceful homes, the children playing where fear once lived, and the friendly conversations across fences that used to divide us. And I knew, My work wasn't done. If more people like Angela were still out there, working with corrupt officials to rob people of everything they'd built, then I had no choice but to return. Knowing that government officials were involved in enabling these crimes, I couldn't simply enjoy a peaceful retirement on my porch. Once I had access to federal support and resources, the scale of the conspiracy became clear. Similar patterns of abuse were uncovered in 12 other neighborhoods across multiple states. The scheme was always the same: corrupt HOA leaders zeroing in on specific properties, using insider knowledge about upcoming developments, forcing sales at rock-bottom prices, and funneling the homes through shell companies linked to government insiders just before massive spikes in property values. The total value of stolen equity reached into the tens of millions, the life savings of hard-working families who had built their dreams around homeownership, only to have those dreams stolen by criminals pretending to be protectors of the community. This wasn't petty theft. This was high-level, organized corruption that threatened one of the core promises of American life: the right to own and keep your home. As I reviewed case after case, the reality set in. These operations were nearly identical to what Angela had orchestrated in our own neighborhood. These bad actors had discovered how to twist the very ideals of community protection into tools of coercion and greed. Luckily, my 25 years of experience taking down crime rings had prepared me perfectly for this battle. And frankly, going after a new breed of suburban predators felt like the natural next step in my career, protecting everyday people from criminals hiding behind legitimacy. Our neighborhood, Willowbrook Highlands, became a shining example of what a community could become once corruption was rooted out and real democracy restored. Property values stabilized at 28% higher than during Angela's rule, clear proof that fair, transparent leadership actually protects and enhances home equity. Resident retention hit 100%. No more families were being pushed out by harassment or financial manipulation. In fact, people were actively moving into our community, drawn by its reputation for sensible, democratic HOA leadership. The turnaround was so profound that our recovery was being used in urban planning courses and national HOA training sessions. I decided to take the next step by founding a nonprofit, Democratic Community Solutions, focused on preventing HOA abuse before it became criminal. Our mission was to educate homeowners, identify red flags early, and support communities trying to take back control from corrupt boards. One of our most requested programs was Recognizing and Stopping Community Tyrants, a training course now being adopted by HOA boards around the country, all hoping to prevent their own Angela Foster scenario. The ripple effects reached legislation as well. The Angela Foster Act mandated oversight on HOA financial practices and required democratic standards for community leadership, making it far more difficult for scammers to disguise themselves as legitimate managers. One evening, as I reviewed files connected to the expanding investigation, Harold Jenkins joined me on the porch. He glanced at my laptop and asked the question I'd been quietly asking myself for months. "Thomas, do you think we'll ever see another Angela Foster in this neighborhood?" I looked out at the quiet street, once her private territory of fear, now filled with kids riding bikes and families talking freely. "Harold," I said, "there will always be predators looking for vulnerable communities to exploit, but now we know how to spot them, how to resist them, and how to build systems that protect good people from being corrupted by unchecked power." I opened my secure comms platform, the one I now used to coordinate with Ghost and other anonymous sources around the country. The fight wasn't over. In fact, it was just getting started. I typed a reply to Ghost's latest drop of intelligence. "Ghost, I'm ready. Send me the full dossiers on all 12 networks. Let's take this down." Harold leaned in as I began sorting through files, each one containing another Angela Foster, a small player in a massive machine. "Thomas," he asked with concern, "are you sure you want to be chasing criminals again, at your age?" I smiled, energized in a way I hadn't felt since I'd left the bureau. "Harold, I never really stopped. I've just found a new kind of predator that needs to be hunted." "What secrets do powerful people bury behind neighborhood leadership roles?" That's the question still burning as I prepare to expose a national web of suburban corruption. If seeing Angela Foster brought to justice gave you some satisfaction, Smash that like button to let the Anadrama Nest community know you want more stories of neighborhood redemption. And stay tuned for the next chapter, where we'll bring you more tales of ordinary citizens standing up against extraordinary greed and deception. Until then, stay alert, because the most dangerous criminals aren't hiding in alleyways, they're hiding in plain sight, a broken bar right in your own neighborhood. We don't invent these stories. Real people are this wild. Anadrama Nest proves it. Make sure to hit the bell so you never miss the next unbelievable episode.